Hey, welcome back to the State of Love and Trust. It's episode 296, and this week we begin a new series focusing in on where the music is made, the recording studio. There's so many iconic rooms across this country and the world, and they all add their own unique flavor to the music made within their walls. So let's start here, in Seattle, at the famed London Bridge Studio, with one of its owners.
Hi, I'm Eric Lilavois from London Bridge Studio, and this is the State of Love and Trust.
Welcome to another episode of the State of Love and Trust podcast. I'm one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi, and alongside me, as always, is
Paul Ghiglieri.
Paul, I have to mention right out of the gate that I am super psyched for anybody who is brand new to the channel, anybody who has subscribed, anybody who has liked past videos, like this video right now. It is so helpful for folks to find these kinds of shows. So everybody who's done that, I really do appreciate you. I also do really appreciate all of our patrons, because all of our patrons and anybody who's bought anything from the pod shop is allowing this show to come back again and again and again and do cool stuff. Like one of the things that we talk about in this episode with today's guest, Eric Lilavois, which is to go to Seattle and do some content up there that isn't usually able to be done. So, Paul, talk about this new series, by the way, because this is a new series we got going on here.
Look, here's the deal. You've probably seen a clip. You've probably watched a documentary. You've probably listened to a podcast about epic recording spaces at some point in time. Might have been something shared with you, might have been something you sought out. What we're trying to do is more than that. This is not studio trivia, right? We're exploring spaces as meaning makers. We're not interested in having people tell us what was it like to have so-and-so there, and what do you remember from when this album was recorded there? You've seen that stuff. It's derivative. You can find it. You can look it up. It's there. We want to ask questions that make those spaces real. We want to ask questions that show that those spaces are alive. And I'm really excited about this because a recording studio, it's not just a room with mics. It's a container, and in that container is something very human. Inside is vulnerability, is risk, is identity formation, sometimes even transformation. There's a lot happening. And I think that the reason that this is important is because we're not asking these folks who come on to tell us what was it like recording X album in your studio. What we're really asking is, what does it mean that this room exists at all? And that is the depth and breadth that I think is going to make this series so exciting, because for me, it's the leap from content to culture. And it's about making these spaces come alive and personifying them in ways that perhaps they haven't been before, or at least not in the context of the kinds of conversations and discussions that I'm so excited to have. So without further ado, I can't wait to jump in on this one.
Absolutely. Let's get it started with Eric Lilavois. Our guest this week is a Billboard Top 10 charting producer who partners with visionary artists, creators, and cultural institutions during defining periods of growth and transformation. Since 2013, he's been one of the custodians of Seattle's London Bridge Studio, the birthplace of iconic records including Pearl Jam's 10, Mother Love Bone, Temple of the Dog, Alice in Chains, Facelift, and many, many more. That, along with collaborations with Island Sound Studios in Honolulu, he operates at the intersection of performance, place, and sound, guiding artists as they evolve and preserving the legacy of North America's most treasured recording studio in London Bridge, where this iconic riff was recorded 37 years ago.
Isn't that insane?
It is, Jihan. It is.
Welcome to the show, Eric Lilavois.
Oh man, thanks for having me. It's so good to be here, and been singing "State of Love and Trust" all day long in anticipation of this. Yeah,
that is so good. Welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks, man.
We got to know each other about 8 or 9 months ago when we celebrated Chris Cornell. Fortunately, now Paul gets to do the virtual hug with you as well as we talk about this fabulous studio and your history with it. Is this the first episode of a new series, Paul?
It is the first episode of a brand new series, one that I am very excited about. And what a better guest to have on. I can't think of a better guest, quite frankly. So thrilled to have you here.
Let's think about all the records that we love and the audience out there loves. And this is one of those studios. So there's like a handful across the country that make the records that we know and love. And before we got going, Eric, you mentioned Sound City. There's a documentary about that one, right? Mm-hmm. You've got, I would argue Southern Tracks in Atlanta before that closed.
Southern Tracks before it closed.
What other big studios can you think of that kind of fit that bill?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, you ask anybody to name a recording studio, and of course you get Abbey Road, right? That's probably like the first one that gets shouted out, iconic. Yeah. But Stax, Gold Star. There's just the list goes on and on. Sunset Sound, Paisley Park,
Henson,
Henson, which is recently acquired.
Called Charlie Chaplin now. John Mayer is going to change the name back to.
That's right.
Charlie Chaplin.
Kermit's going back home to the Jim Henson Museum.
London Bridge Studio, simply put, like we said, iconic space where so many incredible and personally significant records have made over its 41 years. And I'm sure you and others have talked about it from a technical standpoint to death. So we're not gonna. You got the Neve board in there, the walls, the drum space with the brick. We've been over that. And if not, there's Wikipedia and there's other avenues out there for you. So let's get more visceral.
Sure,
let's get more ethereal, perhaps. Yes, Paul?
Yeah, this is what I'm excited about. We're going to approach a series like this in a very different way. It's not going to be the run-of-the-mill stock, hey, talk to us about the studio, let's go over the tech, the specs. What was it like recording here? What was it like having these guys in there? It's really going to be more about this concept of the studio as a band member, the studio as an entity. They say in the world of teaching that great teaching is when you use your classroom as an extension of your teaching. Right. It's almost like the assistant. And so when you record in a studio, that studio becomes a very a visceral, if you will, and very lasting, permanent part of every recording that transpires there. And it keeps within its walls all that history. And so we're looking forward to this conversation with you so we can explore the ethos behind this wonderful place.
Yes, absolutely. It's such a great point. I mean, the statement of another band member is just so huge because it really is. It has its own energy. It has its own, past collaborators. It has its own sound. It has its own constraints. And its own energy imprinted on it, as you mentioned, So there's just a lot of extra factors there that play into the way that it influences a record and the time that the band is having, making the record too.
And I think there's so many kind of drop points in that statement you just made, and we're going to try and access all of them in this chat. And I think the first one, in which you guys both kind of just touched on, is this idea of the studio itself, the room being this extra body. It's almost like another engineer or musician in itself. It's got its own flavor. Every studio is different. So in that spirit, is London Bridge, is it a guardian? Is it an entity that musicians confess to? Does it demand something from the musicians that enter it?
Yeah, well, probably a common theme for the studios is just they demand honesty, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's something that is really, really important. And for a band such as the one that we all admire so much, that comes from such a solid place of honesty and integrity, I think that's that's really, an interesting thing, like just the demand that a place can put on you in that sense. It's a reflection. Playback is going to be honest. It's not. It's going to demand of you to be able to listen to what's coming back out of those speakers, not just what you're putting out in the moment. Yeah. And it can be a character. It can almost be mythic to the bands who walk in that door, in the same way that it can, for us from a fan perspective, it can be that way for bands coming in there too, who have just so many of the records that they admire and have listened to time and time again, were recorded at. That kind of puts a little, intense amount of pressure, walking through those doors.
A ton. I mean, like you worked on a lot of records there, and you knew Rick P. Before he passed away. I gotta ask though, like, so suffice to say that you have a great perspective on how this room influences artists when they come, especially first timers. What do you see or feel in them? You said the room demands honesty. What do you see in these artists, the ones that step into that room for the first time, because they know the history of the room? Right? Do they change at all? Does it bring the best out in them? Has anyone had a tough time within those walls and kind of said, "Hold on a sec, I just got to take this in." Let's sink in where we are for a second. And when you sit down, what does that look like?
Paul, I've seen both approaches. I've seen artists walk through and slow down and say, I got to walk through this place slowly and absorb and check this out and really feel into it. And I've seen others, kind of come in a sweat and sort of like barrel through the lounge past all the gold records to, try and get into the control room as fast as possible. And it's like,
can you explain to Paul and everybody out there who's not been to London Bridge Studio, because you can't avoid the success to get to where you make the music, right?
Right. Yeah. Unless you go through the back load-in door, which is sometimes happens too. But yeah, the wonderful part is when you do pull up, it's an unassuming warehouse. It's just, like you would never think there's a recording studio there. It used to be even more remote, but the neighborhood's kind of grown up around us. But when you walk through the front doors, you do kind of, peruse the hallways of, Andrew Wood's signature is right there in the first thing that you see when you walk in front of our guest book. And that kind of sets the tone,
so they're barreling through sweating sometimes, huh? They're just I can't look at this. It's going to get in my head.
That's right. For sure. Sometimes that's the case. And other times it's slow and absorb and, both are helpful. I think that part of the reason that we keep the studio, you don't see any of those platinum records on the inside of the studio. Part of the reason that those walls are bare is for folks to be able to, have absolute freedom and sovereignty in their own creations and to be a little bit locked out of that, that thinking. It's sort of like, Shangri-La, have you guys heard of Shangri-La, Rick Rubin's studio in LA? After every single session, they smudge the place, they repaint the walls white. There's no any memorabilia in there whatsoever. It's just really, really refreshed so that, artists have just a completely blank slate every single time. So, there's a sense of having some of that in the live room and in the control room of just making sure that when you're in there creating, it's your place, it's your space. You obviously, it's up to you how you harness the energy of what's come before you, but you're there to be a sovereign creator.
I mean, if you want to plant a bunch of copper trees everywhere, you can, right?
You can, you can do exactly. You can do, yeah, it's exactly it.
Paul alluding to your former group, yes?
Yes, yeah, that's a good reference. I like that, Paul.
When people are in there, so they go past the walls, either they're blowing by them or they stop to appreciate all of the success that was created in the room. Has anyone said to you, like, I'm feeling a little extra pressure to nail it? I mean, obviously, you said that the tape doesn't lie, and of course you can scrap a take, right? But at the end of the day, one of them has to be the one. You got to get it right.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed anybody kind of letting that weight affect the takes?
I think it's a producer's job to really guide the artist through that, and to get an artist in the mode where you are, utilizing the energy as a force, as your own force, as opposed to fighting it, and having a time to celebrate it, and having a time to get over it, and having a time to have all of those conversations. And so, that's kind of the thing too, is we're fast tracking what the whole process looks like. There's definitely a lot of conversations before even getting into the studio and all of that. But for the most part, I think, with the right guide, it's channeled properly, and it comes across as both being able to pay homage, but also, putting your own new, fresh sort of spin on a space that's very much so still alive and still making records that are relevant.
Do you find? Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was going to say that there's the space inside, but then there's also the space outside. Now, the room itself, obviously, the acoustics, the board, the mics, the placement, and of course, obviously, the band's gear, all that affects the sound.
Right.
But what about the area itself? Like, many bands look for studios that are going to affect their mindsets one way or another. I want to go to this remote area and just lock myself away, or I need to be in the thick of it, or I need to be, in the Hollywood Hills somewhere, hoping that all that seeps into their playing on the record. What have you noticed about the Pacific Northwest in particular, and how that region shapes the music and the mood that's coming into that room? So is the weather a factor, the isolation, the community of musicians over the years? What stands out to you?
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, such a great point for studios in general, right? It's like you go to Los Angeles, it's going to accelerate you, right? You go to New York, it's going to confront you a little bit, right? Well said. Seattle, I think Seattle checks your intention a bit, Hawaii, I've been doing some recording out there. I think Hawaii settles you, So the question isn't necessarily like which is better, because those are all important. It's what does the music need? What does the song need? What does the record that artist is trying to make in that moment in time need? And sometimes it's acceleration. Sometimes it's very much so not, I think of Prince, doing those early recordings at Sunset Sound, and just how pivotal it was for him to be in that environment where, the room itself was very punchy and very in your face. It wasn't this big wide open studio, it was kind of like being in a boxing ring, he needed that sort of pace and environment to make that record. But then down the road, he builds Paisley Park. He's realized how the environment affects him and how he wants his environment to be set up. And his music starts to get so much more there's so much more experimenting going on, and it becomes genreless in a very trippy way. And he's created this entire world in which he's not subject to the limitations that he kind of needed at Sunset Sound, to make those early records.
It's interesting how even the same musician or band requires a different setting because of the station that they are in their personal life, because we're at the station of what the band is at. And obviously, the North Star for these kind of conversations and these thoughts always, for us at least, comes back to Pearl Jam. And you think about, Eddie needing to be in the middle of friggin' nowhere for verses, right? He needed to be sleeping in his truck, and they needed to have it was a nice studio, but it was kind of the middle of nothing in Marin, But then sometimes, they came down here at Henson Studios to do Lightning Bolt, and it's like, why did they need that then versus the remote thing then? Like, why did Nirvana need to go to Minnesota, versus Sound City versus, do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Do any of these groups that come in, if they're older or if they're younger in their careers, do you notice a trend either way of why an artist might want the Seattle environment affecting them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, there are so many folks influenced by, they're not even just 90s, but right, that little, beautiful in between there with Mother Love Bone and Soundgarden and everything and all of the artists, so many artists that led us into that explosion. So it's really cool to see that is, certainly a reason that folks are coming out. Particularly, a lot of people travel to London Bridge. A lot of people travel specifically to, both from a fan perspective and from an artist perspective. It becomes a pilgrimage, and that's a great way to make a record because you're hyper focused. Sometimes when the studio is right around the corner, you tend to take for granted the fact that it's right around the corner, or if it's in your basement, that record may take a little longer than expected. So I think that, being able to travel to a studio too just gives you this lightning in a bottle feeling. And it gives it a sense of urgency and also a sense of, in the now we're here, this is what we're doing. We're making this record, let's make it happen.
I go back to something you said about this place demanding honesty of you. Every artist is different, certainly, but I gotta imagine that at some point in the recording process, someone finally reveals themselves. Maybe it's frustration, maybe it's just exhaustion, maybe it's catharsis. Can you speak to some moments that you can recall where you're watching this unfold and you've seen an artist finally show who they truly are? This moment of just pure vulnerability, how it affected what they were trying to achieve. Maybe it was a vocal line or a guitar solo or something they were struggling with. Does anything stand out where you're watching something and you're saying, wow, I just saw a piece of this person that I didn't think I'd ever see?
That's such a beautiful question. It's interesting. It happens in a lot of the spaces, in a lot of the downtime, in a lot of the conversations. And I think that's what's so beautiful about a studio environment is that it's so much more than when the tape is just rolling, Yeah. And we have this kind of, Hollywood version of what it is to make a record in our minds sometimes, this 30-second clip. And
somebody at the soundboard just pushing the dials up, and it's a moment of silence, and then
do it again. But better.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but better.
That was perfect. Okay,
we need one more for safety. One more for safety.
Yeah, exactly. So
tell me about those moments of honesty.
I'm thinking of a time period. I worked with an artist, an independent artist from LA called Givers and Takers. And the band came up, and this was a super hyper kind of, I was explaining, hyper focused because they traveled in just for that week. So I'd flown down, I'd done pre-production with them in LA. We had a pretty tight, version of what we were going to come in and cut once they actually got to the studio. But, the band members were definitely very heavily affected by a lot of the music that had come through there, Blind Melon namely. And we had our first kind of little powwow in the control room, and I, just casually threw on the song Change by Blind Melon. And it sort of slowly started getting louder and louder and louder, and it was like you could just feel in the room everybody kind of connecting deeper and on a deeper and deeper level to what was going on in this song. And by the time, that the chorus comes around, it's just like everybody in the room is just weeping, and there was this moment that grounded us all and connected us all before we got started, where it was like, all right, we've walked through the door, we've set the energy, we've set the intention, we've walked through the door. Now it's time to do our own painting, to do our own creating. Yeah.
What an arresting moment that must have been.
Oh.
It's kind of like you think about apartments, and apartments anywhere, but I always think of New York and how there's such high turnover in certain parts of town, and like you'll go in and you'll live, and they always have to repaint it, right? They always got to repaint it, especially if you like choose to like make it unique and not just the same bland off-white eggshell color that every damn apartment is, right? And so you maybe paint one wall blue or whatever it is, and then they have to repaint it. And after, you know, some of these old brownstones in Boston or whatever, how many layers of paint are on that wall? And if those layers of paint absorb the stories and the life within the room, how much life is stacked up like rings in a tree?
Yeah.
When you think about the sound reverberations going into the walls of your studio.
Yeah.
That gives me chills just thinking about it. I got to wipe those off. I mean, that's pretty wild, isn't it?
I know. They talk about like echoes going into space and traveling, you know, for ever and ever and ever. It's like, that's pretty wild to think what's passed through those walls to get all the way out there.
So recording music, this has totally and drastically changed in the last 20 years to the point where a lot of artists now, they can do everything like from a laptop, right? They can do MIDI, they can create a drum track and loop it, whatever. They can do it in their bedroom. I got a bunch of plugins. I can mimic the Sound City reverb to get that drum sound to mimic the Nevermind fills, whatever.
For sure.
And
you get that Instagram ad too, huh?
Oh, I get all of them. I get all of them. I'm in the algorithm of that. I get all the ads.
Yeah.
And you can approximate to some degree some of these places and some of the vibe a little bit maybe. You know, to the proper quote unquote studio, but it doesn't mean the feel is going to be there. So the question is, you know, the cost of a studio versus recording. That notwithstanding, of course, what has changed about creating music and recording music now versus 20 years ago when people couldn't record? Because people are coming to you for a reason. They could do it at home. They want to do it at the studio. Why?
Yeah. I mean, there's just kind of no substitution for something that's built from the ground up to capture in that way. You know, you're absolutely right. There's a million different ways to emulate it. But to capture it, you know, with integrity, I think is a different story. And then also just as we're, you know, as we're deep in this discussion, it's like, it really is an energetic thing too, you know. It really is a energy exchange with a producer, with the other collaborators, with, you know, the music that's come through those walls before, big or small, you know, the gear that's been used, and the conversations that you just that don't lead to great art, you know, when you're just having them with yourself in your bedroom, you know, on a laptop. So I think you need that push, that community, that, you know, on many levels, and no matter what level of your career that you're at.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's pros to the evolution of technology for an artist today to say, hey, I can't afford to go into a studio. The fact that I have the tools, pun intended, to actually record my own album in my bedroom is something that, you know, wasn't possible decades ago.
Right.
So I mean, on one hand, I think that there's something, as you pointed out and rightfully said, about being in that physical studio and having a handful of musicians and then working together collaboratively, that you can't replicate that in your bedroom, as you pointed out. But when we think about technology and you look at it through that lens and its uses, sometimes when you listen to an album, you get that feeling of like, God, this thing, man, it sounds really overproduced. There's almost like this over-reliance on it. Like you think of auto-tuning and mapping of drums to a grid to keep them perfect. For all those tricks, it's still obvious when something isn't authentic, right? Like, can artists be authentic through that kind of engineering, or does it need to be more raw than that? And I guess to that point, what simply just cannot be faked?
Right. No, I think there absolutely is authenticity in those tools. You know, it's a matter of how you're utilizing them, and it goes back to our honesty, right? It's sort of like if you have that very clear picture of who you are as an artist, and that those tools are, you know, a part of your I am, so to speak, then absolutely, you know, I think that's as far as the things that you can't necessarily replicate, London Bridge, for example, was built as a live recording studio. So a lot of those early records that we love so much, that was the band actually in a room together playing at the same time, So it wasn't as layered as a lot of the stuff is now, where you have like drums to click, then bass, then guitar, then, all these things done in different compartments. It was for the most part live with some punches and an engineer really sweating when they had to do that, or had to cut tape or put, reels
physically
together.
Cutting tape for all the young people out there.
Absolutely. Physically cutting tape, putting up 2 different reels, and, praying to whoever you pray to. And then some, maybe, some extra just for backup. And then making decisions. So, that's another thing, just making decisions, right? It forces your hand when you are, when you're working in that kind of environment, when you are, doing things live, when you're doing things as a band and saying, let's select a take and build on that, you're forcing some decisions too. Yeah.
In the last, I don't know how many years it's been now, probably a slow, what's that analogy, the frog in the boiling pot of water versus from cold water to boiling, you don't realize you're boiling before it's too late kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I feel about the music industry over the last 25 years, where we've slowly started to see how album sales matter less and touring and merch matter more. It used to be the other way now, so now we're over here. Yeah. How has that change in the industry? Because to the point of anybody can make a record anywhere kind of thing,
right? Yeah.
With the costs that go with that, if the artist cares about the costs of feel and authenticity to a degree and use of instrument and whatever, how has making a record been affected by that? Like, are bands coming in and saying we can only afford 4 days because we have to make our nut back on the road, or what? How does that affect? Is it, we can only afford 3 takes per thing? Like, what is it about these?
No,
that's, what I mean?
That's a very, very real thing. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we are, I'm speaking about making records in a little bit of a nostalgic way, and in from the artistry perspective of it. If I switch hats for a second and we really look at the music industry, what's happening today, and exactly what you're saying in terms of monetization of what the artist walks out of or walks away with from the studio, that's not where anybody is making a huge profit at this point. You're right. It is touring. It is through other means. But what I don't think will ever change, and I hope that I hope I'm right about this, but I feel in my core, and this translates to conversations about AI and about evolutions in technology. It translates to all of it. At our core, that artistry is what is always going to prevail. And I think that an artist really wants to go in and make a serious record that represents who they are and what they do. An artist is not necessary, though they are being advised on and taking advice, and very much so want to participate in the business, in the way it's evolving. I think that core artist, music first, is always going to be there and has to be there. We as artists have to be the protectors of our art and of the way it's created, and rely on advice on how to make the machine keep rolling or whatnot. Right. But that should not be the place from which we worry about how we create.
And you've been working in that space for so long. Like, you've worked with countless bands in that studio. You've absorbed Rick and Raj Parashar's stories of yesteryear. When did the process, or like a song itself, reveal the people making it? Can you think of a time where you felt like you saw that authenticity of, like, you You just see the person behind that moment.
You know, it's, again, in those spaces, conversations about what's that really about and what's really happening here. And, you know, that's kind of cool. That's really abstract. Like, what do you mean by that? And in that sense, you know, everybody starts to push each other a little bit more because we all want to understand, right? So it's, it's a beautiful thing to see that collab happen and to start to see, you know, the lights turn on and between band members, between a producer and a vocalist, you know, or see that light turn on just internally, you know, someone scratching down a lyric and all by themselves, and you kind of, you know, peeking over there, just going like, something's happening right now. You know, the wheels are turning. You see those lights going on.
Those are the kind of moments that you kind of wish you had, like a camcorder, just be like, and then you show them later, like, look,
yeah,
this is amazing.
Yeah.
So many records and so many stories in those walls. Hell, the property lines of London Bridge. I can imagine many conversation, a cigarette, a drink have been had in the parking lot in between takes.
Yes.
I mean, you've like I said, you've been one of the custodians since 2013, but you've been working there a little bit before then, right?
Yeah.
Even to Paul's point, the stories from Rick and Raj.
Yeah.
Are there some stories about the process, either inside the studio, in the halls, outside, that would surprise somebody about the record making process at that studio?
I think it's one of the things that's most beautiful is most of the stories, you know, that I've heard and when I ask and when I really think even about my own, they're all about the time that everybody was having in the studio, or they're all about like these extracurricular little details that have nothing to do with, you know, I don't know what amp somebody was running through. And I love that. I love that I hear more stories about, you know, Jeff Duncan basketballs in the parking lot to settle an argument than I do hear about like specifically what amp he was using that day. You know, I love hearing stories, you know, about Jerry Cantrell recently told me a story about how, you know, Alice in Chains would like, that we have a rope swing in there. For anyone who's never been in there, there's this rope swing that was hanging from the ceiling that we've since tied up. But you know, was free for all of these maniacs to to have fun with while they were in there.
I just set the drum mics up. What are you doing?
Yeah. But Jerry told the story of like, you know, they would have a contest and like try and see who could get their footprints the highest on the walls, you know, like run from one side of the studio to the other.
They finished. Thanks, guys. I really look forward to scrubbing that off.
And then someone had to repaint the ceiling.
Right. I'm sure you could probably still find some footprints up there. But you know, those are the things. I love that. I love that there aren't these, you know, it's not like just all about this technical stuff. That it's a testament to just how much human experience happened in that place, and it's a testament to the way that when we listen back to those records and we feel the way that we do, that there's so much, you know, power and human emotion behind them. It's not just, you know, not just the instruments there.
When bands choose to come there, new bands, actually, two-part question. For the new bands, maybe there's one answer, and for the returning bands, another answer. Why London Bridge? What's the reason they say we're going to book that?
Yeah, there's a variety of reasons. You know, I mean, I think that for some people, it's the history's undeniable. The console, of course, is undeniable. You know, you think about it, and every record ever made in that place, big, small, you know, any and all sizes, has gone through that console, which is, you know, pretty intense. It's the glue. You know, so those are certainly big reasons for folks. You know, and then I think that the environment that we've set up, the time that we, you know, make sure people have while they're there, you know, the relationships that we've kind of, you know, forged and built in the community. I think those are all solid reasons to come and hang and be a part of, you know, what it means to record there now, you know, sort of like backed up by that legacy, but very, very much so still living, breathing, and creating and there for folks to, you know, utilize.
When a band raps at London Bridge, especially first timers, what are you hoping that they leave with?
I'm hoping the band doesn't break up.
Well, I don't know. That could be good for a story for London Bridge. The last everyone here.
You know, because it's making a record can be very intense. And I think that, you know, we all put all kinds of different pressure on ourselves. But I know certainly I remember leaving there for the first time as an artist and just being so bummed out and so sad that experience was over. And that like, just that very weird, like post show come down, but you know, like the times a million, you know, and, cause you just put it all out there, you know, and
it's like summer camp when you're 14.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, I hope that they've taken with them all of those things that we've just been talking about, all those experiences, the 5 minutes that, you know, that we got to hang, like that the door was jammed and like, you know, we couldn't get in, or, you know, somebody like mistakenly, you know, left whatever on all night and we just like gave them shit about it for the whole next day, you know, like those things. I hope they walk away with all those little micro stories for the rest of their lives. And you know, it's a monumental experience just through those little tiny moments, you know.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Okay. A big conglomerate comes through and they snatch up all the land. All right.
Yeah. No, I don't like this at all.
This is it. This is the last weekend. All right.
Oh, wow.
So you take a drive down there and you're going to spend the last hour with your friend wow. London Bridge Studio. And you lean up against the wall. What's the first memory that comes to mind? What do you want to reminisce with London Bridge Studio and remember? I have a follow-up, by the way.
That's intense, man. That's a flood chicken skin happening right now.
No, because I'm curious, like what bubbles up to the surface at that time, because that's going to tell me a lot about what really hits home for you.
Yeah, you know, it really is a flash of so many things. It really honestly is. And it's more so just a feeling, you know, than anything. Because London Bridge for me has been this intense crossroads of so many different things I love, you know, and have an enormous amount of passion for, you know, the community and bringing the community together. You know, the music that came out of that place was so instrumental and pivotal. And, you know, we all have those records that saved our lives. And, you know, for three of us on this call, I can guess which band that might, you know, might be at the top of that list. And
Nickelback. Silver Side Up. Come on. Not a bad record. Don't dump on Nickelback. That's a good record. I like that record.
I got nothing to say about that one. But you know, there's just so many, not to mention, of course, all of the records I've just had the privilege and the honor to work on and the artists that I've intersected with. But I really, when you say that, so many flashes come through, you know, the home shows, hundreds of fans coming through there and helping raise some money for the Vitology Foundation, that the things that we've done in tribute to Lane with his mom, and you know, seeing the fan community come together there and you know, do things for therapeutic health services, and you know, the Chris Cornell, you know, birthday show that we did, all of that stuff is just, to me, equally as important to the recording that's gone on there.
See, I think that's what's so cool about what you're talking about, because when you answered that question, you answered it essentially. I could distill all that into one word, and you said it. It's community. That's friendship, right? I mean, it's about community. That place is an anchor of community for you and for so many who have been there. And the thought of that street, that area, and the absence of that studio there is a loss of community, and that hurts. So,
oh yeah,
I get that.
Most definitely, and I think that whatever we can do, because it's inevitable. These are physical spaces, and everything has a time limit on it. But the spirit of that,
but not today.
Not today. But the spirit of that, I think, we have not only an opportunity, but an obligation to keep that alive, forever, and that's something that I hope that the legacy of that, is something that I hope sticks around forever. And that people, when you ask them that question, that their answer matches.
Well, I'm curious to the answer to this question, and it piggybacks off what Paul just said in this horrible hypothetical that I refuse to actually think about. Let's say the bulldozers were closing
but that
in.
Question got to the heart and soul of why he cares so deeply about this
I am
place,
not going to admit
and why
that you're
we
right.
should as well.
I'm not going to admit that you're right. You settle down, Ghiglieri. Okay, no, but to Paul's point, because it was a good point. In that horrible apocalyptic scenario, you got time to blast one last record in that room. And don't pander. I'll know if you're pandering, Eric. What's the last record that you would play in that room?
Oh, come on, man. It starts and ends with 10 for me, always,
Okay.
I mean, always. It's, still to this day, this is, I don't know how this is going to play, but I have my closing down ritual to this day is Yellow Ledbetter. I consciously turn the house lights on, and I say goodnight to London Bridge. That's my ritual.
That is epic.
So that
That's
would definitely
cool.
be the very last, thing. But as far as a record start to finish, you got to go with
That's
10.
like the most cinematic thing.
It's
Because I mean, honestly, you mentioned the Chris Cornell birthday weekend that we did last July, and shout out to Anita for organizing that, and Shihan for being on the panel with you. And that was Shihan at the beginning. Concert fans out there doing the Mother Love Bone riff. We played clips from Temple of the Dog in the room, like just in a speaker, like from someone's computer or phone. Like it was like Spotify, but through speakers. But to hear those notes reflected off of the walls and the ceiling, all the bodies in the room, it's like I'm getting bumps right now just talking about the memory of that moment when I got the bumps.
Yeah.
Something about it, my friend.
I know. It's that record is, I mean, there's so many that came out of there that have that effect, but Temple is so special. And, talk about lightning in a bottle. I mean, you have like that 14-day window where Eddie just happens to be up too. And I don't know, that's something that is just magical. The lore behind that. And it sounds fantastic, but I'm still going to stick with 10 on this one.
Okay, that's fair enough. It's a great answer. Eric, this recording studio has been one of those friends that I didn't know was a friend. Like I wanted it to be a friend for a long time, and then I finally got to meet the friend last year. And I'm like, they say don't meet your heroes, but no, but it's great. I'm glad that I met that friend, that London Bridge studio. And I will say, because there is so much weight behind it, and there's so many stories. I mentioned the paint analogy. Well, now I'm going to bring up a well-seasoned skillet. Like there's just layers of flavor baked into that studio. You could fry an egg on that bad boy, no problem. Let's throw it out the thing. but that commands so much weight. It commands so much nostalgia, it commands so much history and weight. And I think about bands coming in there, and if a person like you was not a custodian of that building, it may offer up a different canvas. Mm-hmm. And I think it requires a person like you to be, because I walked in there and you and your family were so welcoming and so chill and just like,
thanks, man.
You complement the weight and the heft and the vibe of that room with such a welcoming, like, no, it's okay. It's not going to bite. It's here to help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. And I thank you for being one of those custodians.
A good steward and custodian.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. It means the world. And it's, it truly is what it's all about. It's like, to be able to, that place was a vehicle for us to meet and to be here and to have this discussion. And I feel like that's the case for so many. And, it would be, watching folks literally travel from all over the world to come experience it. And a lot of them keep in touch, which is really cool too, so.
Go check out London Bridge Studio if you haven't. Just knock on the door.
Don't
do that.
Make the pilgrimage.
You could be in a session. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Do it the proper way. Do it the proper way. But yes, it is a pilgrimage for a lot of people, and maybe we'll have more of those down the line. There's always ideas forming in all of our heads to make it a great adventure to partake of, to go up there and check it out, among other great beacons of music in Seattle. So thank you for being our first guest of studios and deep diving and what these rooms mean, because I live 5 minutes from the famed one-on-one, I don't think it's called that anymore, but one-on-one studios where the Black Album was made in North Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
I drive by it every day and I'm like,
yeah.
I go to my son, I go, that's where the Black Album was made.
Yes.
He doesn't really understand, but I'm like, that's like that. These rooms are iconic, and the fact that it's still there and London Bridge is still there, and I think about ones that aren't. So thank you for being that guy, and for being the first guest of this series. And hey, everybody, London Bridge Studio, Eric Lilavois.
Oh man, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. This has been awesome. And just really, really, love and appreciate everything you guys are doing and talking about. And lots of positive. Let's keep putting out, there's some positivity out into the world, and keep talking about all these things that we love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With you
Preach,
there.
my friend. Preach. Thanks again to Eric Lilavois from London Bridge Studio. It's not technically Seattle. It's just north of Seattle, and the actual town is blanking on me. So don't ask. Just look it up. Google is your friend. I could have done the research beforehand, but who has the time when wine is the time? Am I right? Am I wrong?
It's wine 22. Yeah, no, I hear you, man.
You mentioned at the very top of the show how every one of these rooms, every one of these studios offers its own character, its own flavor. It reminds, if you're not necessarily a connoisseur of that, let me put you onto some analogy here, which would be some people are all about visiting every single Major League Baseball stadium. And I bring up Major League Baseball because every single Major League Baseball stadium is different. They're all unique. You go to Houston, yeah. Or even the old Tiger Stadium, or older Detroit friends will know. There is literally a flagpole in the middle of center field. Even the Polo Grounds, if we can go back even further, there was a hill at the Astros stadium for a little bit. The fences are different heights. The Green Monster, they're in, they're out. There's open air. They're all different, and they all offer something different. And they all say, "Hey, you can hit a home run here. You can't hit a home run here." Everything is different. Everything is unique, but the game is the same. And the game here is recording music, making art with your friends, with your brothers, with your sisters. And how does that room affect the art? Because it's a player in the game. It's a player in the game, right?
It is.
And I don't want to single out baseball because football stadiums do the same thing and yada, yada, yada. Sure. But I find it so interesting how these rooms can affect the art that we love so much. And I can't wait to get to your Sound Cities, if we can do it, Abbey Road, Sunset Sound, name there's so many. I'm blanking on Electric Lady Studios in New York. I mean, there's so many great ones out there. In fact, if you have a studio that you think should be spotlighted in this series, you should comment below or send us a DM or comment somewhere on social media, and we will put it in the old Rolodex of studios to investigate further for conversations like these. So that's it, man. This was a lot of fun. And
the only thing I can say is, if you were wondering, well, what does it mean that London Bridge exists at all? That was the question that we sought to answer in this conversation tonight. And I hope for those of you watching and listening that you feel you got pretty close to the answer if it wasn't revealed already. So I certainly feel a sense of what it means that this place exists. And I look forward to future conversations with more folks to try to answer that same exact question for those other iconic studios as well.
There you go. Again, like I said at the top of the show, thank you to all of our patrons and anybody who's purchased anything from the official pod shop. Links are below if you want to help do that or be a part of the community. We love everybody out there so much who's a part of it. And if you're here on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Thank you. I saw that you did that. Thank you so much. You're the best. And audio-only listeners, Paul?
You're going to rate, review, and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm. Feed it because we need it. It's the Ides of March. It's time. It's time. You got to feed it.
Well, it is definitely the time to feed the hope machine as well.
That's true.
I mean, right now, let's feed that hope machine, and hopefully a series like this will help, as Eric mentioned at the very end there. So put the good juju out there, people. Come on.
Love it. Love it.
All right, we got plenty more great interviews and segments and stories and episodes coming down the pike as we turn from winter into spring here in North America. And we'll see you next week. Until we do, you're listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.